My name is Rachel Morgan, and I am 52 years old. I have reached a point in life where the storms have quieted, but their echoes still shape the way I move through the world. At this age, you learn to trust your instincts, to listen for the quiet shifts beneath the surface of ordinary days. Most of those instincts were hard-earned, carved out through years of raising 2 children, returning to school in my 40s, and repairing the strained relationship I had with my own mother, Louise. For most of my adult life, I believed my mother's controlling behavior came from fear. She grew up poor, terrified of losing what little she had. Money, to her, wasn't just currency. It was safety. And if she controlled the money, she believed she controlled the chaos around her. I learned to live with it, even to understand it, though not to trust it. When I returned to college at 48 to finish the degree I'd abandoned in my 20s, I paid my way through with savings and work study. I never expected to earn a full scholarship for my final year, certainly not at my age. But I did. And that scholarship resulted in an overpayment, money the school was set to refund directly to me. $75,000. Enough to pay off my lingering debts, help fund my daughter's graduate school, and finally create a small cushion of security for myself. I had been checking my portal every few days, watching the status of that refund move slowly through the pipeline, review, approval, and then, finally, processing. It should have been simple. The funds would be deposited into the bank account I had entered on file. Everything seemed fine. Everything felt normal. But sometimes betrayal doesn't start with a bang. Sometimes it starts with a feeling, soft, subtle, persistent. A faint tightening in the gut when a situation feels slightly off. And that feeling came one Friday morning when I checked the portal again, fully expecting to see the same status I had seen earlier in the week. Instead, I saw something I couldn't explain. A single, unsettling line. Refund disbursed. But not to me. At first, I stared at the screen, convinced I was misreading it. Years of learning to doubt my instincts crept in immediately. Surely it was a mistake. Surely the system had mislabeled something or not updated fully. Then I clicked the Details tab. And that's when everything inside me went still. The refund, my $75,000, had been deposited not into my checking account, but into a different bank under a different name. My mother's name. In that moment, I didn't gasp. I didn't swear. I didn't even blink. I simply sat there, perfectly still, feeling the cold realization unfurl through my chest. Something was very, very wrong. And I knew, before I confirmed anything, before I made a single call, that this was only the beginning. When I was younger, my mother used to say, "Nothing teaches you more than disappointment." I never fully understood what she meant until that moment, staring at the screen that spelled out her betrayal in plain text. I logged out and logged back in, as if that would change anything. It didn't. The same record loaded again, refund disbursed to an account under Louise Morgan. I whispered her name aloud, not because I needed to hear it, but because saying it made the reality more tangible. My mother. My own mother had intercepted $75,000 meant for me. A figure so large it didn't feel real, yet seeing her name attached to it made it painfully personal. I called her immediately. She answered on the third ring, her voice sweet and practiced. "Hi, honey. Everything okay?" Everything in her tone was familiar. So familiar it made my stomach turn. "Did you take my college refund?" I asked. There was a pause, brief, but long enough to confirm everything I feared. Then she sighed. A slow, theatrical sigh that she reserved for moments when she believed she was doing me a favor. "Oh, Rachel," she said. "Yes, I had it redirected. It was safer with me. You're always losing paperwork or forgetting deadlines. I didn't want the school sending that kind of money to the wrong place." Safer with her. Those 3 words hit harder than any accusation she could have thrown at me. "I didn't give you permission," I said, keeping my voice calm only because anger would give her a foothold. She always thrived on emotional chaos, mine, specifically. How did you even access my school account? You gave me your password, remember? She replied. Last year when you were applying for financial aid. You told me to help you review the forms. I had. And I had forgotten. A mistake that now felt enormous. But that was one time, I said. Not permission to go back in. Not permission to change my banking information. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. You're bad with money, Rachel. You always have been. I didn't steal anything. I'm protecting you from yourself. It was astonishing, how calmly she said it. How easily she redefined theft as protection. She spoke as though she believed the words. As though they were the only possible version of the truth. What did you plan to do with it? I asked. Another pause. Then, it's already being used. My heart dropped. Used? For what? For things you don't need to worry about, she said. You don't know how to manage large sums, Rachel. Let me handle it. It's better this way. Better for whom? I felt something harden in me then, something that had been soft for far too long. I'm going to the school finance office, I said. I'm getting the deposit slip. You don't need to do that, she snapped, her voice suddenly sharp. Don't embarrass us. People don't need to know our family matters. Our family matters? I repeated. You stole from me. She inhaled sharply. Watch your words, Rachel. But for once, I didn't shrink. I hung up the phone without another word. My pulse was steady. My thoughts were clear. I knew exactly what I needed to do next. And I knew my mother had no idea what was coming. When I was a child, my mother kept a locked metal box beneath her bed. She called it the safety box. Inside it were papers, bank statements, old credit cards, cash tucked into labeled envelopes. She never let me touch it. Not once. Money is power, she used to say. And power is protection. I didn't realize until much later that what she truly meant was, control everything. Trust no one. Growing up, she monitored my accounts, my spending, even my mail. When I got my first credit card at 18, she insisted on managing it to help me build credit. What she actually did was max it out and blame me when the bill arrived. It took years to recover from the damage. But relationships with parents are complicated. You tell yourself things are better now. You tell yourself the past is the past. And sometimes, you tell yourself lies to keep the peace. 4 years ago, we had what I thought was a turning point. My father passed away, and grief softened her. She apologized for small things, her tone, her criticism. She asked about my classes, encouraged me to finish the degree I had abandoned years before. I let myself believe that the version of her I'd known in childhood had been reshaped by loss. I didn't want to assume the worst anymore. So when I got that scholarship last spring, she celebrated with me. She bragged to her friends. She brought me flowers. She told me she was proud. Nothing in her behavior suggested she was already planning a way to take what wasn't hers. But the signs were there if I looked back carefully. She kept asking when the refund would be issued. She asked whether I had confirmed my banking information. She even asked, too casually, whether I still used the same login for my student portal. At the time, I thought she was just being supportive. In retrospect, it was reconnaissance. The truth is, my mother has always believed she knows what's best for me. And in her mind, whatever she decides is automatically the right thing. She never learned to apologize sincerely. She never learned to see her behavior as harmful. And she never learned the difference between guidance and control. The fear that drove her actions, fear of scarcity, fear of inadequacy, fear of losing her grip on the world she built, had calcified into entitlement. An entitlement that allowed her to justify anything, even theft. But at 52 years old, I finally understood something I should have learned decades earlier. When someone refuses to respect your boundaries, they will continue taking as long as you allow it. And this time, she had taken too much. As I drove to campus to meet with the finance office, I realized I was no longer searching for answers. I was searching for proof. And I intended to find every piece of it. The university finance office was quieter than usual that morning. It was the kind of quiet that made every sound sharper, the tapping of a keyboard, the buzz of a printer, the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. A woman named Clara greeted me. She had kind eyes and a calm voice, the kind of person who makes you feel anchored even when your world is shifting beneath your feet. "I'm here about a refund issue," I said. "A significant one." She motioned for me to sit. "What seems to be the problem?" I explained, carefully, calmly, that the refund listed in my portal had been directed to an account I did not authorize. I didn't mention my mother's involvement. Not yet. I simply stated the facts. Clara nodded, her expression growing more serious with each detail. Then she turned to her computer. "I'm pulling up your file now," she said. "Give me a moment." She typed. Paused. Adjusted her glasses. Then she frowned. "That's strange," she murmured. "Your banking information was changed 2 days before the refund was issued." My stomach tightened. "Changed how?" "It looks like your original checking account was replaced with another account under the name Louise Morgan." She turned the monitor slightly so I could see the screen. And there it was, undeniable, my mother's name attached to the deposit line. "Can you see who made the change?" I asked. Clara nodded. "We track every edit to financial profiles." She pulled up an audit log. My eyes scanned the entries until they landed on one that made my breath catch. User login, r.morgan_student IP address, residential home address on file change, bank account updated date and time, 2:14 p.m. last Thursday. Last Thursday. A day I had been in class until nearly 5. A day my mother had been home. Clara clicked another document. "We also have a copy of the direct deposit authorization. It appears to have been submitted electronically." "Was there a signature?" I asked. She nodded again, slowly. "Yes. But it doesn't match the signature on your admissions paperwork." She printed a copy and handed it to me. There, in shaky cursive, was a name meant to look like mine but unmistakably not mine. The loops were wrong. The slant was wrong. The spacing was wrong. It wasn't my hand. It was hers. For a moment, I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The evidence lay in front of me, bold and damning. Clara leaned forward. "Ms. Morgan, did someone else access your student portal?" I swallowed. "Yes. My mother." The words felt heavy coming out, but they were the truth. Clara exhaled softly. "This is a serious breach. And it constitutes identity misuse." "I know," I said quietly. "What do you want to do next?" she asked. Her question hung in the air like a challenge. I didn't want revenge for the sake of spite. I didn't want to hurt my mother. But I also couldn't ignore the facts or the lessons life had taught me. If you allow someone to violate your boundaries once, they will do it again. So I steadied myself, looked Clara in the eye, and said the words that marked the turning point in everything that followed. "I want to file a formal dispute." Filing a dispute with a university is not a simple process. It requires forms, statements, evidence, verification, and a willingness to recount events with clinical precision. Fortunately, clinical precision was exactly what I needed. Clara guided me through each document. I attached screenshots of my portal before and after the unauthorized change. I included the audit logs, the deposit slip, and the signature comparison. I also wrote a detailed statement, a calm, factual account of what happened. No emotion. No accusation. Just truth. After we finished, Clara made one final note in the file. The university's policy requires that funds misdirected through unauthorized access be recovered, she said. This will initiate our internal review. You may be contacted for additional information. I nodded. I understand. As I left the office, my phone buzzed. My mother. I silenced the call. 10 minutes later, another call. Then a text, "Where are you? Call me back immediately." I didn't. By the time I got home, she was waiting on my driveway, arms crossed, foot tapping, expression sharp enough to cut steel. "You went to the school," she snapped before I even stepped out of the car. "Yes," I said calmly. "I did." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You think you can do this to me? After everything I've done for you?" "I didn't do anything to you," I replied. "You altered my financial information without permission. You took money that wasn't yours." She took a step closer, her voice rising. "I told you, it was safer with me." "Safer?" I repeated. "Or more accessible?" That hit a nerve. I could see it in the way her mouth tightened. She pointed a finger at me. "You're making a mistake. If you tell the school I took it, they'll come after me. Do you understand that? They won't handle this privately. You'll drag your own mother into legal trouble." I met her gaze steadily. "You dragged yourself into it." Her anger faltered then, replaced by something else. A flicker of fear. "Rachel," she said, softer now. "I needed the money." There it was, the truth she hadn't intended to reveal. "What did you spend it on?" I asked. She hesitated, but only for a moment. "Debt. Bills. Things I shouldn't have had to deal with alone." "You could have asked," I said. "You didn't need to steal." Her eyes filled with a familiar defensiveness. "If I had asked, you would have said no. Because it wasn't my responsibility. Because it wasn't her money. Because boundaries exist for a reason." But she didn't see it that way. She never had. I took a deep breath. "I'm giving the school the truth. What happens next is up to them." She stared at me as if she didn't recognize me. As if the daughter who once gave in, who once apologized just to end conflict, had been replaced by someone unyielding. "You think you're stronger than me now," she whispered. "You think that degree makes you better." "No," I said, voice steady. "It makes me free." She opened her mouth to argue, but I walked past her and into the house. For the first time in my life, I chose myself over peace. And she didn't follow. The confrontation didn't happen where I expected it to. Not in my driveway, not at her house, and not over the phone. It happened in the university's administrative boardroom 2 weeks later. My dispute had advanced faster than I imagined. The finance department confirmed the unauthorized access. The audit logs matched her login pattern. The mismatched signature alone was enough to void the deposit authorization. And because the money came through scholarship adjustments, federal funds were involved. That changed everything. They scheduled a formal review meeting with both parties present. I hadn't planned on inviting my mother, but they had contacted her as the listed recipient of the funds. She was required to attend. When she walked into the boardroom, she carried an air of indignant confidence. But as soon as she saw the stack of documents on the table, her posture stiffened. Across from her sat the director of Student Financial Services, 2 compliance officers, and Clara, who gave me a reassuring nod. The director began. "Ms. Morgan, thank you both for coming. We are here to discuss the misdirection of a $75,000 refund belonging to Rachel Morgan." My mother folded her arms. "I didn't misdirect anything. I was helping my daughter." The director clicked his pen. "We'll review the evidence now." They started with the portal logs. The timestamp showing login activity from her home. The IP address. The bank account change. Then the deposit authorization with her forged version of my signature. With each page, my mother's face paled a little more. Finally, the director turned to her. Ms. Louise Morgan, did you authorize yourself to receive these funds? She straightened. I had her permission to log in. Not to change her financial information, he replied. And certainly not to impersonate her on a legal document. She opened her mouth again, but no words emerged. They moved on. The compliance officer asked her 4 questions. Each one simple. Each one requiring honesty. Each one she danced around with excuses. But excuses don't hold up under scrutiny. By the end of the review, the truth was undeniable. And she knew it. The director spoke with crisp finality. The university will require full repayment of the $75,000. Failure to comply will result in escalation to the State Scholarship Commission and potential federal involvement, as these funds fall under audited distributions. My mother's breath caught. I don't have that kind of money anymore. That is between you and the State Treasury Office, he said. Your tax returns will remain frozen until the debt is repaid. She looked at me then, eyes wide, almost pleading. Rachel, please. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. For a moment, decades of conditioning surged inside me, the instinct to soothe, to protect, to fix. But I remembered the scared 20-year-old who rebuilt her credit because of my mother's choices. I remembered the years spent believing I wasn't capable, because she convinced me I wasn't. And I remembered her voice on the phone, claiming my money was safer with her. So I spoke, calm and steady. There was no misunderstanding. Her lips trembled. You're choosing them over your own mother. I'm choosing the truth, I replied. And for the first time in my life, the truth stood unmoved between us, an unbreakable boundary she could no longer cross. The meeting ended. She walked out quickly, without looking at me again. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. The aftermath unfolded quietly, but decisively. Bureaucracy may move slowly, but when money is misallocated, especially scholarship funds, it becomes a machine with sharp teeth. Within a month, my mother received formal notice from the State Treasury Office. She was required to repay the full $75,000. Until she did, her tax refunds would be frozen. Any state payouts or credits she expected would be redirected toward the debt. She called me only once after that. Her voice was brittle, like cracked glass. They froze my refund, she said. Do you understand what that means for me? Yes, I replied. You did this, she whispered. You ruined me. I didn't ruin you, I said. You made a choice. I simply reported the truth. She didn't answer. And I didn't offer comfort. Because the moment I stepped out of the boardroom weeks earlier, I realized something. Protecting her had always come at the cost of diminishing myself. I deserved better. The university restored my refund on their end, though the funds wouldn't be reissued until the matter with the Treasury resolved. But knowing the money was no longer in her hands was enough for me. Friends asked whether I felt guilty. Strangers online, once I shared a sanitized version of the story, asked how I could take action against my own mother. The answer is simple. Accountability is not cruelty. Consequences are not revenge. Justice does not become invalid simply because the offender is family. And for the first time, my mother was being held accountable for choices she believed she'd never be punished for. I didn't celebrate her struggle. I didn't relish her discomfort. But I didn't rescue her from it. Because growth rarely comes from being shielded. Sometimes, truth is the only teacher strong enough to cut through denial. She stopped contacting me after that one call. No texts. No visits. No passive-aggressive voicemails. It was as though she had folded inward, retreating into her own pride. Or guilt. Or both. In that silence, I found clarity. I had spent a lifetime trying to earn her approval, an approval she wielded like a leash. But the moment I chose myself, the leash snapped. And I walked forward without looking back. Healing doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it slips into your life through quiet realizations, through choices that feel small at first but accumulate into transformation. In the months after the dispute, I finished my degree. I walked across the stage in a deep blue gown, the air crisp and bright around me. When my name was called, I felt no bitterness, only gratitude. Not for what my mother did, but for the strength I found in myself because of it. I used to believe that loyalty meant endurance. That family meant forgiveness without boundaries. That love meant sacrifice, even when it hurt. But age teaches you something precious: you have the right to peace. You have the right to reclaim what is yours. You have the right to stand in your own truth, even if others refuse to stand with you. My mother never returned the money all at once. Instead, the treasury collected it slowly, year after year, through frozen refunds and redirected credits. She never mentioned the debt again, at least not to me. I suspect the silence was her way of pretending the consequences came from somewhere else, or from no one at all. But I no longer needed her acknowledgement. What I needed, what I gained, was confidence in my own voice. In the end, this wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about boundaries. About accountability. About refusing to let someone rewrite the rules simply because they raised you. Parents should guide their children, not steal from them. And sometimes the most powerful form of justice is the decision to stop protecting the person who keeps hurting you. I'm Rachel. I'm 52. And this is the truth I leave you with. Money can be replaced. Trust cannot. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you love, ask yourself this. What would your life look like if you chose yourself, just once? Tell me your thoughts. I'm listening.